Hello there. When it comes to cyber threats, especially APT groups, there is often some kind of attribution. Researchers tell us that some attacks came from China, Iran, or mostly Russia. But how do they know that? How do good guys know where the bad guys come from? And how can their actions impact you? Those are the questions that came up really often in the comments in my previous videos. So I will look into how pointing a finger at criminals is done from the backstage. That's why I came to Bratislava, to Eset headquarters, to sit and talk with Robert Lipovský, principal malware researcher, and Ondrej Kubovič, security awareness specialist. Of course, we need to tread carefully before revealing anything that could help these actors in their operations. And all of that was made possible with the help of DAGMA IT Security, who are partners and sponsors of this video. So without further ado, how do we know who are the bad guys that are performing the things?
So when we talk about attribution, we should say that there are two types of attributions. There's the technical attribution, and then there's the political attribution. Security companies, cybersecurity companies like ours, we do the technical part of the attribution. So that's the first stage, where we map attacks, campaigns, malware that's used in those attacks to a threat actor that's known in our industry by code names that we like to give them: APT28, Sandworm, Fancy Bear, the Lazarus, etc., etc. We'll get more into those later. And then there's that second part. That's that political attribution that is going further to say that Lazarus is North Korea, Sandworm is Russia, etc. This second part is being done by intelligence agencies. So we take this information from sources, and so when there are credible sources, we can say, okay, so this attack was carried out by this nation state, but it wasn't our conclusion. Our conclusion, and the one that we can back by technical evidence, things that we have actually seen, things that we have actually observed, is taking those artifacts, those indicators of compromise from the attacks that we have seen on machines of our users, for example, the users of our security software, and we can say that, okay, you have been targeted by Lazarus, you have been targeted by Sandworm, and so on.
There are so many names for the groups. I mean, there are multiple naming conventions, so I'm lost sometimes with those. But you're talking about the technical indicators of compromise, and that's the most interesting one. From the perspective of Eset, you have this data. Where do you get the data from?
The main source of our data is our telemetry. So that means telemetry coming from the users of Eset security software when they have opted in to share this type of information. So the telemetry, I should also add, is anonymized. So unless we are dealing with a direct incident response case where the customer contacts us and we're dealing with this, or through some partner, in the majority of cases when we have some detections, we don't know who exactly the victim has been. So this is our source for the threats, for the malware samples and such. That's the main source. It's not the only source, it's the main source. There are other sources like various sample sharing schemes which are taking place between cybersecurity companies, which is actually quite interesting that we have this sharing, this collaboration going on. Then there are sources, various public sandboxes like VirusTotal being the most famous one, which is also a source of information as well. But as I said, the main source where we get information, is about attacks and new samples of threats, is telemetry from our user base.
So it's about collaboration. The more you share, the more we are all secure, right? So as a person that is nobody is special in today's world, I would say that most of the time people were thinking about cyber criminals and groups that were targeting them for their money. That means we have the cybercrime groups that are trying to steal the money. We'll be talking about them in a while. But right now we're having a situation when there are more APT groups, so government-related groups that are also trying to perform some actions. Are these two anyhow connected?
Yeah, it's exactly as you described it. So when we look at the spectrum of the cyber threat landscape, on the one end, you would have the cybercrime, the e-crime, whatever you like to call it. At the other end, nation-state targeted attacks, APTs. And exactly as you're suggesting, sometimes those boundaries are not so clear-cut. Also, it's no longer the case nowadays that in the past, maybe it would be fair to say that the APTs were more sophisticated, more advanced, as opposed to the regular cybercriminals. Nowadays, you have very professional, very advanced criminal groups that have taken those techniques that typically were the domain of only APTs, and they're learning from them, and they are conducting the attacks very much like an APT intrusion. So you would have ransomware gangs, for example, no longer getting on those machines by way of mass spreading emails and catching the low-hanging fruits. You would have very, very professional intrusions, and then you would have those attackers, those operators doing their research on the companies and in order to be able to extract the highest ransoms and possible, and so on. So the techniques that are being used by cyber criminals, so financially motivated, and APTs are overlapping. That's a fact, and also even the campaigns and the groups themselves. So one notable example of that, perhaps the most notable example, being North Korean threat actors, where they go after not only secrets and information and typical subjects of cyber espionage, but they are going also after financial motivation. So they would, for example, target cryptocurrency exchanges, try to steal cryptocurrency wallets, also as a way to fund the North Korean regime, which is isolated and subject to sanctions and so on. So they're trying to use this way as a way of circumventing that. So yeah, especially with North Korean APTs like Lazarus and other North Korean actors, this diversion into cybercriminal activities is something that's quite visible.
If I could also add, there have been also cybercriminal groups that actually declared for some state that was in the last 2 years. There have been leaks of their internal communications. We have seen that, for example, with Conti ransomware. And there were also public statements, let's say, right after the invasion happened, where some of the actors have declared like their support for one or the other side. So we have even seen this like declaratory, let's say, area happen already, which before I think was pretty rare to see that some actor would say that we are also supporting, for example, Russia in this case.
So we're talking about motivation. For me, the simplification of saying the cyber criminals were going mostly for money, and North Korea APT groups. But when it comes to the geopolitical stance, like you're saying, some of the groups were doing hacktivists movements. They were saying, hey, we're supporting this or the other side. Their motivation is to do what? To spread the propaganda, to destroy. What's the idea out there?
Why they declare, you mean? I would say, especially in the case of the ransomware gangs, it was, let's say, protection from the state. So they were operating in some areas where they probably felt more comfortable to be in line with what the regime was saying. And for them, it meant physical safety, or that they were, maybe somebody would approach them, but not in a bad way, like banging on your door, making a raid at 4 a.m. in the morning, but like gently coming, knocking, asking for help and stuff like this. So for them, it's much more comfortable, and in the end, they can continue with their business as usual. So I would say this was the reasoning behind the declaratory approach.
And the business is on the rise when it comes to stealing money, right?
It is, and it is actually getting also into areas that were previously not targeted, or it has been improved, added new tools, and with the boom of AI, we're probably going to see more of that.
I'm happy to jump deeper into that, because you're saying about automatization, about the AI. I heard that you're having very interesting Facebook ads that you're clicking on.
Yes, we have a detection that we call no money, which is that we have taken that from the no money in the end. And that is a type of a scam that is running typically on Facebook right now or Instagram. It's an ad that is using a deepfake video. So it's going to be a deepfake video. In Slovakia, for example, it was the president. In Czech Republic, it was the prime minister, former prime minister. In Germany, for example, it was the leader of the opposition. So they are always trying to choose somebody who's respected, who has some public knowledge, and people are aware that this person exists, maybe even some financial background, and they are trying to leverage this to get the people to click on the link. Often what the ad is saying is not the same thing that what you see when you click through on the website. The website is, for example, we even saw one version of this scam that was saying this famous person has died. You click on it, and when you get to the article is saying the person is being sued for making a great investment and not telling everybody, or telling everybody about a great investment that is secret and nobody should know about it. So they are using different techniques, different scenarios, and what the end goal here is absolutely the money. They are trying to get the people to sign up, which means you give them your name, your surname, you give them your phone number, and then some agent from a call center is going to call you up and try to persuade...
Real people, not the bots.
No, real people. The automation goes only so far right now. Maybe in the future they will find out how to use the deepfake voices to do the calls. But right now it's people sitting in a call center, probably in some like really tough spot, trying to make some money, because these call centers are in Ukraine, for example. And those people, you can hear that from the accent of those people, but they are trying to speak the language of your market.
So it's malvertising into social engineering, into getting your data, then to steal money at the end. That's the flow, right?
I'm not really sure if you can say malvertising, because it's not malware involved, but it's malicious ads. That's true. And in the end, they will try to pressure you and use psychological tricks to push you into sending them money. The fun part is, if you work with them, if you collaborate in a way like, okay, I'm going to be sending money because I'm earning a lot of money back from it, they will be very nice to you, helping you, showing you around. You don't need to give them ID, whatever. They don't need anything from you. You just send money. At the end, when you say, okay, I earned enough, I want to take it out, they'll be like, whoa, that's not that easy. We need your ID, we need your passport, we need your driver's license, birth certificate, and
everything.
Like anything, number on your house door, anything that they can get from you. So they will steal your money, and in the end, they will try to fish you to the bone.
So you end with no money. But the law enforcement is trying to close these people. By close, I mean they're getting their sentences, and we hear about that in multiple countries. Not all countries are reachable when it comes to international law enforcement. Does it help anyhow?
It disrupts these operations, especially one that we have seen targeting the marketplaces, online marketplaces. There has been some law enforcement activity that disrupted it. But what typically happens, these attacks are not done by one group or one actor. It's distributed. They have different roles in the whole scam. So somebody is coding the website, somebody is doing the calls, somebody is building the investment platforms. And when you take down one of those groups, you probably take away the call centers, but it's going to come back in a month or two when they set up a new operation, or somebody else steps in and finds a new way how to do it. So it helps. It's definitely good that these law enforcement actions are happening, because it dissuades some people from doing it. But then we see that the crime has this persistence, and it comes back and just transforms a little bit and continues in what.
So we have supply chain from the people that are out there. We're disrupting part of the supply chain. But do we have any competition out there? Because I heard about some cases when the cybercrime groups were trying to get people from the other groups because, they were earning more money and so on and so on.
I mean, when you talk ransomware, there is a lot of competition, and there were even exit scams where the ransomware as a service, the head group, has taken all the money from the affiliates and quit.
Oh, wow.
And nobody heard of them anymore. And then the affiliates are looking for new ways how to earn the money. So they go to another group that is doing the same scheme but is more honest about it. I'm not really sure if the word is right here, but yeah, they are sending the gains. They are splitting them with the affiliates. So yes, there is some competition, but it depends on the type of crime that you're talking. This one seems to be a work of different actors using it for different schemes. Some of them are trying to sell what we call snake oil. So some fake food supplements or fake medication. Some of them are trying to get you like, were you scammed? We are a law firm that's going to help you get your money back. Or we're Europol and we're going to get your money back. And again, the same thing happens. Again, they will take your information, then an agent will contact you and promise you anything you want in the world. And in the end, they will scam you again.
We started this thread from the changes that are happening in the industry, touching AI and automation. How the things are changing right now with these tools?
There is like different ways how to look at this, like code level, and then we can talk about the scam level. If we talk the scam level, there is a lot of abuse or use of AI in this. Like we have seen fake advertising of the AI models. We have seen malware that has been disguised as you're downloading, for example, Midjourney. Midjourney doesn't have an app on your computer. You can only do it via Discord. But they built an app that is looking like Midjourney that is being installed on your computer. In the end, it's an info stealer that is stealing your information. So yeah, they are trying to use the disguise.
And the info stealers then are selling, like the people that have the info stealer, then they are selling credentials to other people that make use of it, right? So this is the part of supply chain.
Yes, and in the end, you can even end up with encrypted disk or something like that. So many other bad things can happen along the way. But that's like one level. Then if you talk phishing or spam emails, you can generate that with ChatGPT or any of the models easily. And if you're a APT group or somebody who's like more advanced and you are trying to target somebody, you can even use some of their public communication to train the model to talk more directly
like
to
person.
To like that person. So you can use that also. So this level is definitely already happening, and the deepfakes that I've been talking about, it's in the criminal area. That's totally the boom right now. So a lot of them are doing this in all the markets of the world. We have seen this globally. Just since May, we blocked like 4,000 URLs, and and we are working on improving the way how we block this. So it's probably gonna explode in numbers.
Is there anything specific that they're targeting, like, the people that are older, younger? Do you see any patterns in that?
As it's coming from Facebook, the ads, you can look at the EU transparency information, and it even shows you what country, what age groups were targeted. But typically what we see is like, 25 to 65, 32 to 65. Like they are going as broad as possible. And you can see if the campaign is not working, it's going to have like really small reach. For example, I found one that was targeting some Polish bank, and it had like one of the ads had reached 3 people or 5 people or 6 people, and it has been discontinued. Then there is another campaign that was using, for example, our boss here, our companies has been misused for deepfakes in Slovakia, and that has reached almost 100,000 people. So depends, and they are looking at the numbers, at the statistics, and if it doesn't work, they are not going to continue. If it works, they will try to push hard, and like even if the ad is being canceled out by Facebook or taken down, it's inactive, they will replace it with a new one and adjust a little bit so that they can continue.
So they hired some people that know how to prepare that. That's interesting. What about the code level? What's happening on the lower levels of creating the malicious stuff?
So on the code level, the answer is simpler. We're not there yet, which is a good thing, I suppose. We are not there yet as to see AI-generated malware and AI-modified malware. So there have been proof of concepts that we have seen, but they're still more or less in the realm of proof of concepts, academical research and things like that, even the modification. We have been seeing, and this has been going on for a lot of time, server-side polymorphism, so generating various different types of variants, and there's a lot of automation going on behind that. That is nothing new.
Creating different malware.
Yes. So that's definitely happening, but creating these variants through AI or machine learning, that's something that we don't really see. So the AI help with the campaigns is exactly as Ondrej has been describing. So in the targeting and aspect, improving mostly for phishing. So improving phishing by a great
or
deal.
the social engineering part of the attack.
So as the large language models are getting better to behave like humans, they're behaving better at social engineering. That's the evolution that we see. So most of the time when I was talking to my family, to some of my friends, we're thinking, yeah, I mean, that's obvious. We shall be talking about the cyber criminals that are targeting us, so you're aware. But right now we're in a situation when there is a war happening in Ukraine, and the targets have changed. I'm thinking about Industroyer, and I would like to ask you a little bit more about it, because right now we see more and more attacks that are targeting infrastructure. So as a person, if I don't have electricity at home, I would be quite unhappy.
Yes. So maybe taking a step back, so we can talk about what are the goals, what are the motivations behind these nation state APT types of attacks. So if there was no war, if there was not a cyber war, then the typical motivation would be espionage, trying to steal your foreign adversaries' secrets and so on. So this has been also the case for a long time, and it is still the case. But with the cyber war, that even didn't start when the tax started rolling in 2022, but it's been going on for much longer than that. Actually, the motivations have changed as well. They have become more diverse, and the newer motivations were cyber sabotage as well, on top of cyber espionage. So we're talking about cyber sabotage, and these cyber sabotage activities are for the goal of disruption, basically to make the lives of civilians, so regular citizens, more difficult, and basically to amplify the kinetic attacks, the physical war that's going on. And the example that you gave is just an example of those types of attacks. So Industroyer was one of the few cases where the Russian Russian hackers have tried to take down disrupt the flow of electricity for a large civilian population.
Hackers.
Yes. So this attack has been attributed to Sandworm. That's the code name that we are using for this APT group, which has been geopolitically attributed to the GRU. And they have conducted a series of such attacks. In fact, Industroyer, the original version, we discovered it in December 2016. As I said, it's been going on for quite some time, and that was actually a year after an attack that was carried out by what we're calling Black Energy. So little trip down history lane. So December 2015 was the first ever blackout ever caused by a cyber attack. So that was a big deal from our research perspective. So we analyzed this, we investigated this. Then a year later was Industroyer, which was again a similar type of attack, but with a much more powerful cyber weapon. So this Industroyer was unique from our perspective as we were analyzing it, because it was the first ever malware specifically created for this attack. So Black Energy the year before was a more general purpose type of malware. It was also used in the past for other types of attacks, but Industroyer was very specifically created and could speak the language of these industrial devices,
like PLCs and so on.
Exactly, and send commands to de-energize the substation. So that's what made it unique. And then what was interesting was that also when that attack happened, there was a large disconnect between the capabilities of that malware of Industroyer and the actual effect that was caused. It caused a blackout that lasted around 1 hour, around midnight. So that was definitely not their goal. They wanted to achieve more than that. And there were a lot of discussions in our industry, academic discussions. Was this a test? What are they going to do next? When are we going to see this cyber weapon deployed again? And for 5 years, we have seen nothing until April 2022. So shortly after the beginning of the war, we discovered a new version of Indestroyer 2, when they deployed it again. The good news is that the success rate in these deployment has been going down, which is also a testament of the defender's capability to defend themselves improve. So that's good. But there have even afterwards have been other attempts by Sandworm, by the GRU, to disrupt the flow of electricity. So there have not been many cases that were documented, but there were several of them. So this has a similar effect to on the population as are missile attacks against the critical infrastructure. So the means are different, but the goal is essentially similar. And then there are other goals as well. So we touched upon this hacktivism topic, and why these many of these groups, personas are making these public statements and things like that. That's actually something that we are also seeing in relation to these attacks that we're talking about, these destructive attacks as well. So a lot of the attacks that, or to put it another way, we can see a connection between a lot of these attacks and various Russian Telegram hacktivist groups, personas, like Hacknet or Cyber Army of Russia Reborn, and there are several of them. And in many cases, they brag about, they make these posts about various hacks, various compromises that they achieved. In some cases, they're having compromises. In other cases, they're totally made up. In some cases, the compromise did take place, but they are exaggerating the effect that happened. So there's this goal of not only the disruption, not only the sabotage, but also this signaling effect to the civilian population to demotivate them and so on. So there are multiple motivation, multiple goals that are taking place.
So it is impacting me as well. Like, coming from Poland, I have seen some of the Telegram channels bragging about, like, they have taken or DDoSed the websites of some of the Polish airports, and they were having fans saying, "Yeah, Polish people cannot fly right now." But well, they've taken out just the websites. Nobody's entering the website. You're just going to the airport and flying away. But they were creating propaganda. So from the physical effect about Indestroyer and blackout that will impact me, the other very important part is propaganda. So internal propaganda, external propaganda. Because if you're saying we had so many success, who's going to test that out really if the people are flying, just like in case in Poland? Do you see any more cases like when propaganda is used internally or outside for that?
Yes. So there really is a lot of this. So if you take a look at some, I mean, anyone can take a look at these channels, and they're very, very active, have a lot of activity, a lot of posts on them. As I said, many of those either made up or exaggerated, and they are referring to not only campaigns targeting Ukraine, but also in other countries as well. There was this year they bragged about hacking, compromising a water treatment facility in the north of Poland, which again was greatly exaggerated as to the effect that was made. But this they used to illustrate this attack, some screen grabs of having click through this SCADA interface of this facility. And yeah, without actual you have to investigate these cases to actually get to the bottom of what happened, whether there's any merit to this, and actually to debunk these things. But of course, they have this psychological effect as well. And speaking of psyops, there have been actually campaigns that are specifically created just for this goal as well, something that we are calling Operation Texonto, which is a campaign targeting a Russian campaign that we're also attributing to Russia because it's targeting Ukrainian-speaking targets, but also Russian dissidents. So this is interesting. It was also using the theme of Alexei Navalny, and they were using various, so these were email spreading campaigns using spoofed emails purporting to come from various Ukrainian ministries and trying to scare people basically into thinking that they will not have food, water, heating, electricity as a result of the war, and being very, very creative with their motives. And so a lot of some of them were kind of funny, I would say, including attachments with recipes for pigeon risotto. Some of them were a bit darker in nature, giving various ways how to avoid mobilization and things like that. So this is a campaign that we have been tracking as well.
I might add there was one that we probably did not track internally, but there was like from public domain. There have been these bomb threats against schools, and it's not just in Slovakia. It was also in Czech Republic. It was also in Estonia, or
we also saw it in Poland.
Yeah. So, and it was also done just by the means of sending an email into an inbox of the school. Some of them even didn't realize that this is happening because it ended in the spam folder. But the threat, credible or not, you have to investigate. So the schools had to close, and the first week of the beginning of the school year, it's very disruptive for everybody, for parents, for the whole economy. The kids are not going to school. The schools themselves are closed. So yeah, we have seen these types of attacks happening out there, but yeah, you can block it, you can even remove it and put it into the spam folder, but in the end, it still has to be investigated. So yeah.
So we have more psychological operations, psyops, that are targeting people related to war, that they're targeting other countries just to disrupt. Do you know anything about the motives for that? Because when it's about the money, it's easy, but here it's just destruction, right?
In general, I would say all those those campaigns have just the motive to disrupt, to be kind of sabotage on the economy, on the daily works of the society. So you are not really going after a specific target or a specific goal. You just want to make a mess.
Okay,
but even outside even outside Ukraine, so targeting outside other countries, the motivations follow what I already mentioned. Cyberespionage, that is definitely the case. In fact, when we look at the most targeted countries of these Russian APT groups, so the first one obviously is Ukraine, but the number two targeted country has been Poland for quite some time, and we have seen attacks against Polish institutions which are cyber espionage motivated, and we have seen campaigns like the sandworm attacks, disruptive attacks that were targeting Polish logistics companies that have to deal with the Polish support of Ukraine. So these were some campaigns that we have seen as well.
So the idea with the logistic companies, because in my head I would be guessing banks, but so the idea with the logistic companies is like, okay, there is support coming from Poland to Ukraine, and they're trying to disrupt their actions. Like that's what you saw.
That's right. I mean, we have seen the targeting, so we didn't actually, and most of these campaigns were blocked, so we weren't able to see what would be the next stage, the follow-ups after that. But that is a logical assumption, yes.
But when we discussed this with the researchers that were looking at this exactly, one of the theories that came up was that this is showing you how the logistics in time of war works. Mm-hmm. So even the cyber espionage motive is still in game, because maybe if you sit in those logistics companies and you look at how they transport from where, what are the hubs, what is the supply chain again for the war, and you're looking at supply chain of NATO in the end. So that's very interesting to not only one APT group. So it doesn't have to even be the Russian APT groups. It can be APT groups of different countries around the world that might see NATO as a credible enemy. So in the end, maybe more focus is on the logistics these days, and more APT groups are looking into this.
So you're in a perfect spot because you got the data. You see a lot of things that we're not able to see. And I'm thinking myself, like, there's this distinction, because you need to have an open mind for the theories like that are becoming the reality. And as we were talking about the technical indicators of compromise, you're doing probably a lot of the time of the work of connecting the dots. Was it a organized crime? Was it related to APT? How does it work for you? How the work like that looks?
So yeah, connecting the dots is very much what we are doing, or we can compare it to putting together a jigsaw puzzle where we don't have all the pieces. So we're looking for the pieces, and we're doing this investigative work. As I said earlier, the main source for us to do this research is our own telemetry. So our security software would detect suspicious code running on the machines of our users, for example. That will be flagged, and we're able to analyze that piece of code. Oftentimes, so we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. So a lot of threats, I would say the majority of malware, of advanced malware like this, comes in multiple stages. And we don't always from the beginning have that first stage. And keep in mind that our main priority is to protect those users. So when we detect stage 1, we would block it, and stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 will never wouldn't come to play. So sometimes we, in many cases, it will take some time for us to discover those further stages, and for us to be able to put together pieces of the puzzle, and be able to understand how that threat would work. Based on these pieces, we are able to do the tracking. So when we're talking about APTs, we have researchers, we have experts who know these APT threats very well, those particular ones that we are primarily focusing on. And they have various Yara rules set up, and we have internal systems which work in a similar fashion, which will raise similarities when something triggers that is similar, for example. But code is just one aspect of what we are tracking. So there is also network infrastructure, for example.
CNC servers.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we would track the command and control servers that the perpetrators are using. We are tracking, but of course they're changing this command and control server infrastructure as well. So whenever some threat actor uses some custom network communication protocol, we would track that as well, regardless of what servers they are using. So the IP addresses, the domains, they are changing all the time, but we are also fingerprinting the communication itself, and trying to track that and follow that as well. So there's code, there's network artifacts. There are other things which are more at a high level. I mentioned those multiple stages. So you get execution chains. So there's these typical execution chains that various threat actors are using, and we are able to detect those types of similarities as well. Just to give a couple of examples.
I'll just add one thing. All of this collecting of information, to put it together and have a APT group that is doing this, it can take years. So Black Energy Destroyer, that's a really great example of like us getting the breadcrumbs over the years, and in the end now we have a loaf of bread because we now know what it is, what it does, what's the goal, or at least we have a better understanding of it, and we are closer to what it was in the beginning. But the first time in 2015 when we saw Black Energy, it wasn't that clear. It wasn't like, yeah, that's a blackout that's caused by malware, this is going to happen every year, and nobody knew, and we didn't know where the connections go. So it took us years to get all that together, and we're not talking about like smaller things that we found along the way. For example, there was gray energy, and maybe there were XRML, was it called? So there were more types of malware and like telemetry points that were connecting the dots in the end.
Okay, so I assume that the confidence level changes over time when you see more, and there are fingerprints of, as you said, network, of code, of things like that. I remember the attack against the Viasat that was attributed to the Russian GRU unit, probably because there was a pattern of clearing the memory that was just iteration that was found out in other malware. So would you say that laziness is also a fingerprint because they're reusing some of the code?
Yeah, perhaps. But I would say something that we are seeing more and more of, is not using custom malware. So yes, the threat actors are making their lives easier and our lives more difficult for tracking and attribution, because they're using a lot of commodity malware, off-the-shelf tools, things that they can get off of GitHub, and so a lot of things that are shared between a lot of groups. Just as cybercriminals are sharing a lot of these tools, these rats, remote access Trojans, and backdoors and stuff like that. So we are seeing quite a lot of this reuse with APTs as well. So yeah, laziness is one aspect, but then there are other benefits, let's say, that they have in mind with this approach, and that is why we cannot only rely on this investigating, following the trail of the code, but also this other network infrastructure, execution chains, and things like that I mentioned.
Is it laziness or is it effectivity?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm happy to argue on that. Maybe they have deadlines to deliver things. I see a human factor in that. So we're having you on the defending side when you're trying to connect all of the dots, and we have humans on the other side. Do you interact as humans in between, the cyber criminals or APT sides, and do you have any ways to communicate?
Yeah, we have a common chat.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call it interaction or any direct communication channel, but actually from time to time we see messages from threat actors left in code. It's not too often that we see this, so it's quite rare, but happens from time to time. And the messages are left in they have a different vibe from case to case. So sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're vulgar, sometimes it depends, I guess, on the attitude, the mood of the attackers. Sometimes they give us compliments that we are doing a good job in preventing their work. Other times they're frustrated by this because we are making their lives more difficult. We actually saw this with the Conti leaks, where they were complaining about our detection of their malware.
So Conti was a ransomware group that was very, very famous at the time, and there was a leak of all of the chats that they were having inside.
Exactly. So with the internal chats, the operators, the threat actors were complaining about Eset detection. So I mean, that's a good testament of the work that we are doing. And there are some messages that are just funny, and we've even seen messages containing ASCII art and various stuff. So as I say, it's not very common, but throughout the years we can find some examples of this.
Got it. Do you also distinguish, and how do you know that there is a group that they're just starting, and the ones that are out there, they left the messages, and you see a trail of their actions? Is there any way for you to distinguish that, really?
It's hard to say for certain. I mean, there are examples of very professional groups, some of them that Ondrej mentioned, where they are have different roles. So there are the initial access brokers, there are the malware operators, there are the negotiators, so very specialized parts of this very organized criminal enterprises. And there are examples where we don't see that, and it could either mean that it is a group that is just starting and that doesn't have that, or the investigations just didn't reveal that behind the behind the scenes just yet. So,
but in the end, when you follow the group for a longer time, or the actor, or even the malware itself, you can see that they are building it up, and maybe at some point they will get into the industry, or how to call it, the cyber criminal ecosystem, where they start to use some commodity malware or some initial access brokers. So you see them develop into that. So even if it's a new group, it doesn't mean that they're not gonna fit in. It's just gonna take maybe a little bit more time, and in the end, it's gonna be just a very useful part of the supply chain again.
For the cybercrime supply chain.
For the cybercrime.
So do you see often situations like, this was a group that we thought that was part of cybercrime, I don't know, scam, social engineering, ransom, and got upgraded to APT?
I'm trying to think.
I'm trying to find out if there is a distinct line, because these people are coming for money, except in North Korea, and these people are coming for other reasons. I would like to help the viewers understand how these groups are different, because that was the simple distinction I had in my mind. I'm wondering about how you see it.
I'm sure things like that are taking place, but it's this type of investigations are not the things that we are focusing on. So our focus is on the technical aspects. So as I said, telemetry detections on our user base, and the actual investigation side, that is mostly the realm of law enforcement, with which we do actually have quite a lot of collaboration. So we are tracking, especially when it comes to cybercrime, we are doing what we're calling botnet tracking. Basically, it's a more advanced methodology than just replication and running the malware detonating in some sandbox. But we're actually have dedicated parsers for the specific botnet families that we are tracking. We are able to emulate the protocols, for example, get new samples, get new CNC, and get new victimology, victim information. And we are doing this tracking for a long time, and we are sharing this data with law enforcement, who can then do disruptions, takedowns, and so on. The most recent examples of this collaboration being with the Brazil police, federal Brazil police, where they took down, where they disrupted the Grandoreiro botnet. And that's just one of the many examples. So
a few words about Grandoreiro, because it was targeting banks, if you can say a bit more.
So Grandoreiro is one of the many Latin American banking Trojans. As such, it is primarily targeting Spanish-speaking or Latin American countries. Although there were some outliers in the past as well, but primarily focusing on Latin America and Spain. And what's interesting with this one is that it doesn't operate as a service. So nowadays, at least, typical banking Trojans would operate as a service and have affiliate models for this whole ecosystem
and subscription fee.
Exactly. Wasn't the case for Grandoreiro. So that one was operated by a relatively small group of cybercriminals. And the Brazil police was able to conduct several house searches in different Brazilian cities, arrest 5 people, and that actually made a significant dent in when we looked at our telemetry. So this disruption, even with such relatively small police action, it had quite a visible effect on the botnet itself. And what's also interesting is that they're doing a lot of this attack work manually. So what is quite typical for banking Trojans is that other banking Trojans is that they use web injects, meaning that they modify the web pages. They would use form grabbers, try to steal your credentials when you're doing online banking. Not the case for Grandoreiro. They would instead get an alert notification when one of their victims is visiting their bank. So they're looking for this bank. This list of targets is in the configuration based on the window title. They would get notified, and then they would manually connect, like remote desktop sort of thing, and then they would manually follow up and try to steal their money.
So you need to have people 24/7 ready to take the actions, the operators. But that's a happy end. That's great to hear. I'm really pleased. There are some of the actors that are out of reach. By out of reach, I mean like it's not possible to get law enforcement, for example, in Russia, to close some of the people. In my head, I see the operator of the Zeus botnet that is still driving with his Lambo. What are you doing in the cases like that? Because you're in the world of countering cases like this, but that's a little bit bitter at the end, isn't it?
Yeah. So as we were saying this whole time, so our work is focused on the technical sides, and our role is to protect the users of our software. So we're providing them the defenses to protect themselves against this threat. So I would say this type of tracking the botnets and sharing this data with law enforcement is the next step. So that's an extension of additional, let's say, benefit that we can do. We cannot do this all the time and for every single botnet and every single criminal group. But the primary focus, of course, is always on the protection of our users and blocking this malware.
I would sum it up like in cyber, we do everything possible to protect our users and people who might encounter these threats, but we don't have spike strips or anything to stop the Lambo. So, yeah.
But I'm thinking about lost opportunities because in cases when you're having like first stage of the infection, if you follow up on that, you might get, the next stages of the malware of some kind of modus operandi when you're learning from it. Don't you feel it sometimes like it will be great to get into interaction with the groups themselves? Do you go that path sometimes?
When you ask about interaction, you can think of it not only in terms of chat, but you can think of it on the lower level interaction. I already mentioned that a lot of this advanced malware is in multiple stages, and we don't always have these stages from the beginning or always. So just to give you a specific example, and also for these reasons, we have multiple layers of detection to be able to detect the malware on these in these different stages. So, for example, and this is a very real scenario, we would have a network detection of some threat before, but we would not yet be detecting the actual malware, the actual code, the executable. So, for example, we would detect on some victim's machine. So this process is communicating with this CNC server. So we flag it as malicious, and only later add detection for the process for the executable that was triggering that detection. So the order when we add these detections can vary, and at the same time, in this scenario, we would be able to, for example, listen in on that communication between the bot and the CNC, and that gives us some visibility into the interaction between the malware operators and be able to see, okay, so what were they after, what they wanted to do. We don't have that in a lot of cases because when we cut off that communication, of course, we don't know, and we can only theoreticize when we analyze the executable, the malware binary. So we can say, okay, the malware is in theory able to do this, but we don't know what they actually wanted to do. But in certain cases, like the one where scenario that I just described, we can say, okay, so it was trying to get all documents from disk and so on.
I would just add to that, we also have botnet tracking. So we are setting up honeypots, and we are trying to be on the proactive end to see what they are trying to do. And that's something that's beneficial on the end, that you don't have to cut it off, because it's your machine. If something happens to it, it's our hardware, it's our infrastructure, it's our problem, not the client's. But you are here to protect somebody, so you cannot go behind that limit or that behind that line. You can do it on your own, but not on others.
You mentioned Telegram. I mean, Telegram was a go-to place for many cybercrime groups for years, and I mean, the bots, automations, they were offering their services out there. Right now, the situation changed a bit. I mean, when the founder of Telegram was catched in France, it seems like some of the groups are exiting Telegram right now, saying, yeah, it's no longer a safe space because they started giving up the information about the users. Can you tell a bit more about this means of communication? Because for me, this is part of the supply chain. So I believe you're very interested in that.
At least what we can say, the group that we have been following, not a group, it's a tool actually, that we call Telekopye. It's a tool being used on these marketplaces where you can swap your, old bicycle with somebody either for money or for other stuff.
So marketplaces, like, can we give some names?
Yeah, for example,
Facebook Marketplace,
Facebook, but also Vinted, eBay, and now the shift has been to Airbnb and Booking. So even these servers that are giving you accommodation, or services that are giving you accommodation, have been targeted by this. And what the criminals have done, they built a tool that is integrated into Telegram. it's a bot. You just go to that channel, and if you are trying to attack somebody on those marketplaces, it gives you the training, it gives you automated tools in a way like I click on a button and it generates a website for me or an email or an SMS message.
Wow.
Right now with the accommodation, it's even using information because they are comparing it or using some stolen information.
So they're scraping the sites for
Yes.
the data.
Yes,
Okay.
they're the information they are using, they are buying it on the dark web,
Okay.
and they know that you want to buy accommodation at a specific hotel at a specific time. They know your reservation, let's say, but they know that you didn't pay yet.
Yep.
So they will use that information to contact you and force you to pay.
So that looks credible because they're saying, yeah, I know you're going there at these dates. So who would know that, right?
Exactly. And you think like, okay, it came from a safe place. It's a safe platform. I'm going to this hotel for real. So the hotel is trying to contact me to pay for the order or for the reservation. Okay, I will go through, send the money. And in the end, you didn't pay for it, but you paid these attackers that we like to call Neanderthals. And you have been labeled as a mammoth.
As a mammoth, yeah. I heard about mammoth and the Neanderthals that you're using.
They call us mammoths, so we went the other way and we thought, okay, let's call you Neanderthals because those were the guys hunting mammoths, probably.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Is there a way to stop it, really? Because that's a strong part of social engineering, gathering the data, impacting the users. How to get into the process?
I mean, you can use the safeguards that the platforms are offering. So if you are staying within the platforms, many of them are offering a safe space that is protected. Even the payments are often protected. For example, Vinted, you don't even see who you are paying or anything. It's very anonymized for you. And you just see like, okay, I'm sending this somewhere. You get a code. Simple. With the accommodation, that can be a little bit trickier. So again, it's mostly about you staying vigilant, staying on the platform, looking at the URL that you haven't been redirected. If the hotel is contacting you, it's not going to help because the hotel has been hacked. The information has been stolen from them, actually, and then misused against you. So the hotel doesn't even know that this might be happening and that they have some problem. So still, you should be within the platform. That's the thing that's going to save you. And probably if you see something, some attempt to scam you in this way, you need to contact them. So Airbnb or Booking is the way to go. Of course, two-factor authentication, safe or strong passwords. That's like the basic hygiene that you should always follow.
For me, the best counter is to educate.
Yep.
So thank you for sharing all of these examples because I believe that's the best thing that we can do, and they're changing. So I'm wondering, like, your daily job is to track it, is to hunt it, is to look for these dots and connect it. What is the thing that you like the most about your job?
I think it's great source of satisfaction when we have these success stories that I mentioned with Grandoreiro, that actually some disruption take place where all that effort, because there is a lot of effort put into behind this tracking, especially when it comes to botnet threats that are constantly evolving. So it can sometimes be a challenge to keep up the infrastructure and follow them. And so when there is some kind of action, that it's always good.
Main part of my job is to educate and build awareness. So that's what I'm doing here. And that's one of the parts of the job that I really love. But also the education part is for me very satisfying, like building slide decks, building educational materials that are being used at schools and for teachers. Because often these people don't get the tools to do this job properly, especially when it comes to info security and cybersecurity in general. So I'm really glad that I can come there with the credit of Eset and say, okay, this is what we have seen in the real world. This is what you need to be protected from. This is what you need to teach the kids today to not do. So that's really something that's satisfying for me to work on this. And if I save at least one soul, I'm very satisfied.
That's great. Thank you for that. I'm wondering, like, to give our listeners and viewers, to give them some insight into the direction of the things that are changing. Could you share from your observations some of the trends that are out there right now? The trends that are either worrying or that are starting to be out there? Because from the education perspective, I believe every time I'm watching something new, there's like, wow, another method. I wouldn't come up with that, but they figured out something.
I think a trend that we have been observing for some time now is we like to have these headlines. Okay, a new sophisticated threat and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Trends,
Using
trends,
AI.
the predictions for next year and things like that. But the thing is, things aren't always getting more advanced in the sense of more complicated. We have seen many cases where the threat actors, what we're discussing earlier, laziness versus effectiveness. So we have seen with a lot of threat actors actually simplify their approaches quite a bit. We see, so for example, we still see some threats which are very technical, low-level bootkits, for example, using 0 days, a lot of that. But on a much higher scale, we are seeing threat actors which are using simpler methods, methods which are actually very well thought through, as the criminal scenarios that Ondrej described. So they're not very technically advanced, but they're very thought through, and that's actually something that we are seeing. So I think the trend is that for them, they have a resource issue. They are trying to maximize their ROI. And so trying to come up with more clever and effective ways of doing their work.
I would add to that the groups are also moving into the educational space. So they are trying to suck in more people who are not technical, who are not skilled, who are not really into coding or programming. You don't even have to do that. You can just buy the whole service, including the training. So they will give you like, okay, this is the tool, this is how you do it, this is who you can target. With Telekopye, there's a spreadsheet and you need to diversify your targets. So you know, like, okay, who's a good target, because probably this person, and typically it's, I think, more women are tending to spend more on marketplaces than men, and they have these kinds of statistics for different things. So they tell you, okay, you should be targeting older ladies that are looking for, I don't know, cat stuff. Just an example, but something like that can happen in this area. So probably that's the trend. Like, we will be seeing less skilled attackers being sucked into these schemes and doing it, so the volume can grow. But the technical people are still limited, and they are doing the tools and trying to sell the service to somebody else. The other thing that I would mention that is from cybercrime, and we have it, let's say, confirmed from financial institutions, the attackers have moved away from phishing per se. Like, you don't just get a email message that is sending you to a website that looks like your bank. That was the old scheme, old version, how they were doing this. Today, they are mostly trying to manipulate you. So they will try to get you on the phone, and they will try to convince you to go to your account, to give them remote access, to give them some information about yourself, then convert your money into Bitcoin, send it to them. And they're really good at it. I mean, many people are ashamed to talk about it because it happened to them, but there is nothing to be ashamed of. They are really great social engineers. They are well trained to do this, and they can get the money out of you. So if this happens to you, just go to the authorities, try to find help, try to find anybody. And if it doesn't feel okay, don't go for it, because they are even telling people how to lie to the bank. So especially people who are not that technically skilled or not that well versed in that digital, this should be a big like red flag. Like, if somebody's pushing you to do something on the internet, it's probably not going to be okay. So that's another trend that we see in the data, and that's probably also happening on the user end.
And that's a very strong message. If somebody is telling you, hey, this is secret, don't tell your bank, your wife, your husband about something, don't tell in the bank, like, well, that's probably a case when somebody's trying to get you into some of the social engineering case. So please be aware about things like that. For all of the research that Robert and Ondrej are speaking about, it will be under these videos, so you can click all of the mentioned Eset research. There is one myth that some of the people that are approaching me and are writing to me are always talking about, is like, for the case of 0 days, if you're gonna find out the 0 day, would you share it with other antiviruses? I know that there is a value in that, because if you're sharing with the others, we are all more protected. So there is this theory that antivirus companies are creating viruses, and I heard it so many times. I see you're smiling, so you also encountered it. Can you tell me why you're doing it?
Yeah, that's a very very old saying, and I would say that I would be very happy to reach a day and age where we would have to resort to creating our own threats. I mean, we have more than enough, way more than we're able to process and investigate and deal with. So we don't really have to come up with with any new malware or threats.
And we have a funny counter theory: is that we have a night shift that's writing the malware, and then there's a day shift to catch it. So that's always when somebody asks about this, when they are visiting the offices or something, we are always telling this, like, no, it's really not. We don't have time to do this. We have so much to do on the real end that we don't have time to create anything malicious here.
So there are enough cyber criminals and APTs and so on and so on. Are they on the rise? I mean, would you say that, because every time I'm watching, and you can go for absolutely any statistics, there are more attacks, there are more kind of threats that are happening, and so on and so on. I never ever, since I'm into cybersecurity, seen a situation like, okay, we have less attacks, you're getting better. Like, I know this is job security for us in that word, because probably we're gonna have enough job until the end of our life. But for the trends that are out there, shall it worry us, or really that's something to expect, that will be attacked from more vectors?
I guess it's something that we have to live with, and deal with. We actually do see declines for specific families or for specific types of threats from time to time, only for them to be picked up by other things. So yeah, in the grand sense of things, they're typically the trends. There are more trends that are the rising trends. It doesn't mean that they're always, doubling. I'm not saying that they're like exponential growth, exponential numbers. So in many cases, the overall numbers can be more or less constant, or a slow, gradual rise on the overall threats. But yeah, for specific cases, yes, some things quiet down, some things die down. But yeah, the overall trend is more upwards.
Because it's getting easier. Again, we're getting back to the situation that where AI can help you generate a lot of the parts that you need, and there are bad guys who are offering to do this with you for money. So it's easier to do now. So probably the numbers are going to rise. But again, you can also look at it from the bright side. Like, even the defensive technology is getting better. It's getting more advanced. We have more solutions. We have more layers that are protecting you. So in the end, yes, maybe the number of threats is rising, but it doesn't mean that you have to have sleepless nights. No, actually, if you are doing at least the basics right, you should be safe, you should be fine. And of course, if you're a big corporation with hundreds of thousands of people working around the world for you, using different networks, different solutions, products, whatever, it's going to be complicated, and you'll probably be targeted. But you already have the money to fight it, and you will have to go dig deeper, but it's going to work.
But the more layers you have on the defending side means that there are more places to make mistake. I'm having in my mind some of the competition of yours that caused a major disruption around the world quite recently. Not to mention them. I mean, I guess the people will find out themselves or write it in the comments. So I'm thinking like about, because mistakes happen. We are people that are creating the software. We're people that are trying to protect other people. How are you approaching it? Because I believe there were also mistakes of other companies, including Eset, and well, that they were not destructive, but there is a psychology and philosophy of approaching situations like that because we're not perfect. How do you approach it in your work?
I think the approach you have to keep in mind is kind of similar to the mindset when you're in the position of being attacked. So have the mindset of you will be targeted, and how do you deal with that? This is a different scenario, but also I guess a similar mindset in that, as you said, mistakes have happened and mistakes will happen. So what you need to do is be responsible and put measures in place to minimize the impact that those mistakes will have, basically,
or to prevent them.
Yeah, and so but when they do have multi-stage updates, for example, for your software, so that when something happens, it doesn't happen to all of your customer base at once, and basically various measures like that are possible. Of course, code reviews and everything. So I mean, these things aren't new, but of course, especially as we are a company with 6-digit user base, of course, we are taking these things seriously.
The reason I was asking that, because I'm thinking about trust. There are reasons why people trust or don't trust certain companies, and I believe, like as we were talking before, you're doing it for years. You're doing the malware hunting. You're looking for the cybercrime for years, and so on and so on. What if you would have an insider threat? I mean, I'm not telling Ondrej or Robert, but somebody else that is joining the company and is in a junior position and is working for the other side. How do you deal with that?
It's also something that you have to build your internal security around. You have to have this built into your threat model. So, for example, have proper access rights. So this compartmentalization, have this only minimum access to only what you need to access, and these are the approaches basically that to counter these types of threats, for example.
But if you're working in cybersecurity as a company, you have stumbled upon those things along the way. So probably there is not a cybersecurity vendor that does not apply these. So there is some kind of, I would not say monitoring, but like internal checks that are running. And the internal security team is the nexus that should be like having the people who are looking at this and watching for any signs of this happening. So some like data exfiltration or improper handling of information. So yeah, you just need to be vigilant also on this end. So.
I'm thinking about ROI. For example, there was this famous attacks that impacted the DoD and the U.S. government that was part of the APT jobs. I mean SolarWinds, right?
Yep.
So for the cases like that, there are people to trust you. So I really understand that you'll have very tight controls, as you said, over what is happening, because protecting multiple users, that's also an issue of trust. So thank you for the answers where you're trying to explain that, because from my perspective, that's a very difficult position you're in, because you're trying to explain, hey, what are the measures that you're having on your side to protect the users and don't make the mistakes at the very end, because the effect, the ROI is greater when you're having the attacks on the supply chain parts, right? So would you say that in general that's the direction where we're coming, when we're gonna have more of the supply chain attacks, people reverse engineering next patches that are coming to the operating systems and try to attack it ahead of time for the people that don't make updates? So is that
I would say for the most sophisticated of threat actors, that's probably something that we can expect moving forward. Supply chain attacks are, I would say, the biggest challenge that there is, and it's hard, and the danger lies exactly in what you're suggesting, is that it amplifies the impact that a compromise can have. So you can have a relatively small company targeted, but the impact can be much larger because they're role in the supply chain.
Like NotPetya. of its time. That was a
And-
great example.
and many other examples.
Yeah, that
exactly. So
If you can tell more about NotPetya.
It was also one of the attacks that were targeting Ukraine.
Yep.
And there is this one small company doing accounting software. A lot of companies in Ukraine were using it, and their infrastructure wasn't as well protected as it should have been. And the attackers, again, one of the APT groups, has been digging quite deep so that they were capable of misusing the update servers to push malware. And they pushed it to basically all of their clients, causing really great damage economically and disruption to the whole run of society. So in the end, that was a really big incident that had even worse consequences than probably intended when it hit the global companies. And that was probably, I'm not going to say that it was the first supply chain. I'm 100% sure it's not right, but it was probably the biggest one that made the headlines, and that people started understanding that, okay, supply chain attacks are going to be the next thing. And that's what we started saying when we were investigating. It's like, okay, this is something that we probably will see in the future, because the supply chain is getting more complicated, more software is involved, more vulnerabilities can be introduced along the way. And it doesn't have to be always software, but yeah, that's one of the things. And one thing that we have seen in the last couple of years, CVEs. There are new vulnerabilities being published every day. And if you look at them, it's like often it's critical software that everybody's using in their computers, and not all the vendors are fixing everything right away. Or sometimes even if they fix, the update has to be applied, and the companies cannot apply everything right away. So especially if you're a big company that needs to test the update and whatever. So the attackers can take the CVE that is properly described, it has been fixed, everything is out there, everything should be fine. But in the end, there is hundreds, thousands, millions of companies that still haven't applied the patch and can be misused, and they can get inside through those vulnerabilities that are public, that are fixed, but still not well enough to protect the companies at the moment.
This is very significant what you said. Like, please do update your systems. Would you say that updating as the first one is worth taking the risk then? Because that's what I'm always advising. Like, guys, if there is a CVE, that means somebody fixed it. That means somebody will start to use it very soon. Like, you're seeing that from your telemetry in the data.
yeah, definitely. Even though, and we mentioned or hinted at examples where updates have gone wrong and caused trouble, it is definitely by far much outweighed by the dangers of not updating. So definitely, yes, updates are a must.
And there were public cases which even in our telemetry have actually blown up. That was, for example, Log4j. It was 2 weeks to Christmas, 3 weeks before Christmas. I think those IT admins had no Christmas that year, and
Sorry for them. Yeah.
and it blew up in our statistics. It was like 10 million cases in 3 weeks, and it has been fixed. It was public library, open source stuff that has been fixed. That was easy to fix, but some people didn't even know that they have been using it because it was a part of a different software, or somebody else has applied it somewhere in the company. Nobody knew about it. So a small thing can have a big impact, and yeah.
So what you say is that size does not matter when it comes to companies that can be part of the like NotPetya supply chain attacks, because whenever you're having your contractors, you can be a source of attack. So you're actually impacting all of your contractors, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also coming back to what we mentioned in the beginning is that you no longer have these this clear divide between, okay, this is a small, simple cybercriminal group, and they're using these techniques, and this on the other side of the spectrum is the super sophisticated advanced APT actor that in the past used to be the realm, used to be targeting only government organizations, ministries, or the largest of enterprises. Nowadays, those TTPs, they are sharing the TTPs. They're
techniques, tactics, and procedures.
Exactly, and they're so the smaller threat actors are learning from the more advanced guys, and that means that even smaller companies are being targeted using these more advanced techniques, and that they have to take that into account when building their defenses.
Do we hurt the industry by talking about that?
About those tactics,
Yeah.
and procedures? I wouldn't say so. I think it's better to know what you're facing and be prepared than to be in the dark, because that was kind of case before we all shared the same taxonomy or naming, or everybody was talking about the same thing but in different words and naming it differently. It's very similar to what we do with the APT groups. Like everybody calls them differently, and then you have in brackets 10 names.
Yeah.
So this is similar in here, and I would say it's better to know what you're facing. Like that's the main message that I would like to send out. Like it's better.
Transparency is the
Yes.
key for the industry. I believe that also is a key for the trust. Gentlemen, thank you very much for what you're doing. Robert Lipovský, Ondrej, Kubovič were together with me. Thank you for inviting me to the Eset headquarters in Bratislava. I believe we have quite nice view right now in the background. Thank you very much for all of the sources and additional information. You're going to see them under the video. Gentlemen, see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And that's all, folks, from Eset headquarters in Bratislava, Slovakia. A big thank you to DAGMA IT Security, who made all of this possible. I hope you had a great time and learned something new. You'll find new findings coming from Eset researchers in the links down below. Want me to tell you more about one of these in a future video? Let me know in the comments and in the poll on the community page. See you next time.